One of the most appealing things about the classic MacGyver series is its variety. The show evolved so much during its run that every individual season has its own unique vibe while also fitting within the larger context of the series. For example, the later seasons of the show tended to focus more on stories centered on social issues and less on the international spy adventures that were the show's primary focus early on. Since it was an American TV series produced in the 80s and early 90s, one social issue MacGyver returned to time and again was drug abuse. And in the 80s and 90s, the scariest drug of all was crack. It was so scary that if you got caught with it, you went to prison way longer than if you'd been caught with powder cocaine, even though they're basically the same drug. Did we ever find out why that was? I'm sure there must be a reason. Anyway, the producers of MacGyver decided to pit their prolifically Promethean protagonist against the crack epidemic in the season 6 premiere, originally broadcast September 17, 1990, an episode titled Tough Boys. And if you're worried about forgetting that title, don't worry. They made a song.
Listen up, chumps. Listen up good. We don't want no more boys messing up our neighborhood. Tough boys coming at ya. Tough boys.
The Tough Boys, referred to in the episode title and the song, are a group of young vigilantes who have decided to fight back against the illegal drug trade. They've also taken the time to write and produce a song where they explicate their motivations and intentions, to wit, the song's second verse, which I have known by heart since I was 10 years old. Pushers and users, you better jump back, 'cause we're burning down everything related to crack. But in a clever twist that takes the audience's expectations and flips them upside down, the Tough Boys, these community-minded anti-drug crusaders, are not the heroes of the story, but the villains. So does that mean MacGyver is on the side of the crack dealers? Is this the start of Mac's brutal rise to the top as a drug kingpin? No, that's not until season 7. And even then it's only implied. You have to read between the lines. Or the rocks, as the case may be. We are introduced to the Tough Boys and their catchy, though lyrically sparse, new school hip-hop anthem in the first scene, where we watch as the boys who are tough, masked and clad all in black like a gang of ninjas, go on an arson spree, chucking Molotov cocktails and setting bombs, all while their song plays on a boombox decorated with stickers that say rap. In case anyone was curious what genre of music they favored, do you think their parents had cassette players with stickers that said, like, disco, or Motown, or psychedelic rock? Anyway, the arson montage finishes with the boys of toughness blowing up a warehouse that had been taken over by crack dealers. But there's an unexpected complication. One of the crack dealers is still inside and is killed in the explosion, much to the dismay of this tough boy in particular. This other tough boy, though, he doesn't seem too broken up about it. From there, we cut to one of my favorite recurring locations in the series, the Challengers Club, where MacGyver, driving that shitty two-tone pickup which is not of God and should never have replaced his Jeep and should have instead been one of the targets firebombed by the Tough Boys in the opening montage, arrives to find his friend, Police Detective Manny, who takes MacGyver inside to meet this guy, RT Hines, and yes, that is Richard Roundtree. MacGyver meets Shaft! It's a crossover episode. Sort of. Shaft is a different character, but it's close enough for me. Like all classically structured crossovers, before MacGyver and Shaft, or Hines, if you must, can join forces to fight their common foe, they have to start out hating each other. And that's easy, because MacGyver is easygoing and tolerant, and Hines is a strict, humorless disciplinarian. Well, okay, not totally humorless. It seems Hines runs a new program at the Challengers Club, designed to instill self-esteem in the neighborhood kids, and we see him sharing a wink and a grin with one of the younger students, as he's in the middle of his aggressively positive speech. During this scene, we notice one of the other students here. Manny and MacGyver both point him out as Koko, formerly a member of a notorious street gang, is one of the Tough Boys, the one who didn't seem upset about the blown-up crack dealer. Intrigue! Does this hard-nosed RT Hines fellow have a connection to these bomb-happy anti-drug adolescent vigilantes? Manny is very impressed with Hines and the positive results he's been able to produce in his short time with the Challengers Club, turning these formerly wayward youth off of crime and on to physical fitness through the power of yelling at them a lot, like the ideal Reagan-Bush-era male role model. MacGyver, however, is less enthused. As the workout continues, Angel, another tough boy, he's the one who was upset by the crack dealer who got exploded, interrupts, boombox on his shoulder, blasting that Tough Boys song we've all come to know and love. As if this wasn't disrespectful enough, it's also obvious that Angel has been drinking. Angel gets in Hines' face, tells him he's tired of taking orders, doesn't want to be anyone's soldier, and kicks a full mop bucket over on the mat. Hines responds by grabbing Angel in a half Nelson and dunking his head into the water of another mop bucket located conveniently nearby. After 2 dunks, MacGyver's seen enough. He steps up and tells Hines to lay off the kid. Angel leaves. I guess seeing that crack dealer die a few feet away in an explosion Angel helped to set off really messed him up for some reason. Kids were so sensitive back then. Hines says to MacGyver, "Hey, can we talk outside?" They step outside and Hines is like, "So I should not kill you? Why?" MacGyver says, "I get that you're trying to instill discipline into the kids, but shoving Angel's head into a bucket of water like that, it's borderline abusive, and I have strong, mostly negative feelings about that." Hines insists that his actions with Angel were appropriate. MacGyver fires back that they were excessive. Their mutual friend Manny steps in between them and says, "As a police officer, I think I'm the best possible judge of what constitutes excessive force, and what I see here are 2 people who want the same thing." Hines disagrees, dismisses MacGyver as a tourist who doesn't understand the problems they're up against in this impoverished, crime-ridden neighborhood, and walks off to look for Angel. MacGyver doesn't seem happy about being called a tourist, but that shirt isn't helping his case. We check in with the local drug kingpin who lives on a yacht at the marina. Hey, I wonder how close his yacht is to MacGyver's houseboat. Wouldn't it be cool if they were neighbors? Anyway, the drug kingpin says to his 2 underlings, "I'm getting sick of these tough boys blowing up our buildings. How am I supposed to sell crack that's already been burned in a fire? That's the whole point. I want these tough boys to be dead now." Back at the Challengers Club, MacGyver walks in on the other 3 tough boys, Koko, Hector, and Sinclair, watching a news broadcast about the latest Tough Boys fire and openly boasting about how they are the tough boys. Then they notice MacGyver standing in the door, and Koko, who seems to be the HTBIC, head tough boy in charge, makes an excuse about how they all have to go do their chores like the upright, non-violent, law-abiding young men they are, and they leave. Koko, Hector, and Sinclair catch Angel on his way out of town and persuade him to stay and help them with the burn down of another drug den. Angel reluctantly agrees, after being reminded of the sacred tough boy oath he took, to reclaim the streets from these drug freaks. Meanwhile, MacGyver and Manny are at the site of the last fire, and MacGyver is trying to convince Manny that Hines is the leader of the tough boys. Manny doesn't believe it, and furthermore expresses sympathy for the tough boys, since they're going after the drug dealers in ways that the cops can't. MacGyver decides to check out this RT Hines guy, so he asks around about him off-screen, then goes to talk to him at the Challengers Club. Hines is like, "I heard you've been asking around about me off-screen." MacGyver says, "Yeah, I was trying to find out why you're such an asshole." Hines is like, "I was in the Marines." MacGyver's like, "Well, that explains it." The tough guys are nearby, and they're worried MacGyver is going to reveal their identities, so they decide to send him a message telling him to leave them alone. Mac is driving along when one of the tough boys, in full ninja gear, jumps into the back of his truck and knocks out the back window. All it takes is one gentle tap, and the window pops right out because the truck is such a rattletrap piece of shit. The tough boy runs into a building, so MacGyver pulls over and follows him inside. All of the tough boys are in the building, and they lead MacGyver to a trap, which he helpfully walks right into. This scene boasts some of the worst writing in the entire series, so of course it's a favorite of mine. I'll explain why a bit later. Basically what happens is MacGyver is confronted by the tough boys, who do some silent ninja posing, then drop him through a trap door, catch him in a big cargo net, set a bomb with a 3-minute timer on the edge of the trap door opening, and leave. Using the momentum of the swinging cargo net, MacGyver manages to grab first a length of copper tubing from an air conditioner, which he fashions into a hook, and then an extension cord, which he ties into a lasso. Using these tools, MacGyver is able to grab the bomb with about 10 seconds left, but he is unable to disarm it, and he basically gives up and braces for the explosion. Except there is no explosion, because the bomb is a dud. The tough boys were just trying to scare him. Manny tries to convince MacGyver to lay off the tough boys and let the cops handle it, but the sophistication of the trap he walked into has him more convinced than ever that RT Hines is the brains behind the tough boys. MacGyver goes to Hines' house and finds the door open, so naturally he walks inside and snoops around. Hines surprises him from behind with a gun, like, "What are you doing in my house?" Mac says, "The door was open." Hines says, "I know. I left it that way on purpose. It's a little game I play. Leave my front door open and shoot whoever walks in. It's cheaper than cable and more entertaining. Have you seen some of those channels? Arts and entertainment? Why do they need an entire channel for that?" MacGyver tells Hines that he suspects him of leading the tough boys. Hines is insulted because he would never break the law or use kids to fight his battles for him. MacGyver mentions that the trap he walked into was located behind a locked door, which means whoever helped the tough boys set it up knew that MacGyver wouldn't take the path of least resistance through the building. Hines says, "Seems like whoever it is, they know you pretty well." Who do you think it is? Do you have a guess? Do you think it might be the only character left? We cut to the tough boys waiting for their leader to arrive. The leader shows up and, surprise, surprise, it's Manny. He's been providing the tough boys with training, equipment, and information. As he briefs them on their next and last assignment, we cut back to MacGyver and Hines, who have worked out that Manny is the leader of the tough boys for themselves. It seems that Manny is also a Marine, having served with Hines back in the day, and Manny has a personal reason for wanting to wage a private war against crack. His daughter was a crack addict and died as a result. MacGyver and Hines go to Manny's house to confront him about the tough boys, and Manny immediately pulls a gun on them, confirms all their suspicions, and informs them about his plans, and gives them an emotional speech about his crack baby granddaughter. He refuses to allow MacGyver and Hines to thwart his plan to have the tough boys blow up one more drug warehouse while he takes out the drug kingpin on his yacht. He locks MacGyver and Hines in his garage and bars the door. MacGyver makes a hook out of the handles of some paint cans, ties it to the end of the starter cord of a lawnmower, and lowers it to the other side of the door to lift the bar. Pretty slick. The drug kingpin has set an ambush for the tough boys at his warehouse. They show up, dressed in their ninja suits, even though it's broad daylight, so what's the difference really? Gunmen working for the kingpin attack the tough boys, but MacGyver and Hines show up before they can finish them off. Together, they take out one of the gunmen, and Hines grabs the guy's Uzi. MacGyver, who, like Batman, Kwai Chang Caine, Kevin Costner from Field of Dreams, and all other true heroes, does not use guns, takes the Uzi away from Hines, unloads it, and declares it to be a wrench. I love MacGyver, and I would kill for him. Just not with a gun. MacGyver threads a fire hose through the rungs of a ladder, and Hines turns on the hose using the Uzi wrench, and that takes out the remaining gunmen. Then they find the tough boys hiding in the warehouse. Koko has been shot and is dead. Tough boys shout and tough boys cry. Tough boys bleed and tough boys die. Aren't tough boys just like you and I? The cops show up, and MacGyver and Hines take off to try and stop Manny from doing whatever he's planning to do to that drug kingpin. They, along with the media, who have been invited by Manny, arrive to find Manny on the yacht with the drug kingpin on his knees. Manny is ranting about what a scumbag the Kingpin is, how terrible the drug trade is, how all the drug traffickers and all the crooked politicians who support them or look the other way can go to hell. Also, he's wired the yacht with explosives, and when he's through with his little presentation here, he's going to blow it up, destroying all the drugs on board and killing the drug kingpin and himself. Manny reads a letter his daughter wrote him before she died about how much crack addiction sucks, and then announces that he's going to trigger the explosives. MacGyver and Hines climb aboard the boat and try to talk Manny out of it. He refuses at first, but eventually relents when Hines reminds him about his granddaughter. Yeah, I'm sure Manny will be a great parent to his crack baby granddaughter from prison. Who am I kidding? He's a cop who tried to kill a drug dealer. He's not doing any time for this. Okay, the drug dealer is rich and white, so maybe Manny gets a 6-month suspension with pay. With the main story resolved, we return to the Challengers Club for a quick denouement where, at Hines' invitation, MacGyver takes over the self-defense class for the day and tosses out Hines' original "I will PT you all until you fucking die" agenda and replaces it with some nice, gentle stretching, which Hines openly hates. Does he not usually stretch before a workout? Is that why he's so grumpy all the time? He walks around in constant pain from all the pulls and sprains he suffers because he's too much of a macho hardhead to stretch for a few minutes at the start of his workout? Anyway, MacGyver wins the end. It's a fun episode. I like this episode. Richard Dean Anderson and Richard Roundtree aren't necessarily a pairing I thought I needed to see before I saw it, but they work really well together. There are many recurring characters who act as sidekicks, or if we're being very generous, partners to MacGyver throughout the series. Pete, of course, and Jack Dalton, Penny Parker, Nikki, a couple of others, but there's no one who clashes with MacGyver's own methods and personality quite as sharply as RT Hines, which is what makes them such an entertaining pair. A perpetually angry, hard-ass drill instructor and a socially conscious improvisational genius and master of escape. They're the action-adventure odd couple. Unfortunately, RT Hines isn't a recurring character. This episode is his only appearance, which is a shame. He makes a strong impression here, and it might have been worth bringing him back so he could, I don't know, kick the shit out of Murdoch? Like, MacGyver is halfway through building this elaborate contraption so they can ensnare Murdoch when he comes looking for them, when Hines just stands up, grabs Murdoch by the back of the neck and beats him until he pisses his pants. It practically writes itself. Alas. However, despite its virtues, mainly Roundtree as Hines and his interactions with MacGyver, this isn't one of the show's better written episodes. I know badly written MacGyver episodes covers a lot of ground, but even in that crowded category, Tough Boys has always stood out. Again, I want to stress, I like the episode. For me, MacGyver is pretty much critic-proof. Even when it's poorly done, I still find it likable and entertaining and a good laugh. And there are a couple of areas in which the script for Tough Boys rates as poorly done. For a start, the reveal of Manny as the leader of the Tough Boys is one of the least shocking twists ever. Maybe if this was your first time watching anything, or encountering a narrative of any kind, you might be shocked. But I bet most of you, like me, would watch this episode, and by about 15 or 20 minutes in, you're going, okay, the leader of the Tough Boys is obviously Manny, let's just get on with it. Part of what makes the reveal so obvious is how hard the script tries to misdirect us toward Hines being the leader from the moment Hines first shows up. He's got the Tough Boys in his program at the Challengers Club. He encourages the kids to take responsibility for their neighborhood, to make it into whatever they think it should be. He's a no-nonsense, brute force kind of guy. He has a military background. He insults MacGyver for not taking the destructive effects of the drug trade on the community seriously enough. He seems so much like the kind of guy who would try to fight his own personal war on drugs that you just know it's not going to turn out to be him. Once you realize it's not going to be Hines, there's really no alternative but for it to be Manny, who is played by Richard Shives, who wrings everything he can out of this part. When you combine the law of conservation of characters with Manny's tragic and conspicuously crack-related backstory, his expressions of sympathy for the tough boy's actions, and his repeated attempts to get MacGyver to stop investigating the tough boys, his revelation as the secret leader of the gang doesn't play as a shocking twist, but rather as the other shoe belatedly dropping. Another problem is the tough boys themselves. Dressed in their ninja outfits, they make a ridiculous sight. Ridiculous in a way that works very well on this series. I mean it as a compliment. Unfortunately, none of them really pop, and the tough boys end up as generic as their name. Angel has his one big scene where he shows up drunk and gets a mop bucket baptism from Hines, and Jason Scott, who plays Angel, is a whole ham delight in that scene, but every other tough boys-centered scene is flat. Koko, played by Garvin Funches, is a standard issue squad leader, true believer type, and the other two, Hector and Sinclair, are so nondescript they could have been played by a couple of the mops that went with those buckets Angel kicked over and got dunked in, respectively. And that's not a knock against Gabe Kuth and Danny Watley, who played Hector and Sinclair. They didn't write the characters, and they did the best they could with what they were given. The most glaring flaw in the writing of the episode, though, as I alluded to earlier, is that MacGyver gets snared in a cargo net by the tough boys scene. So, what's so bad about that scene? Let's talk about it. First, MacGyver walks face first into a trap like a total sucker. MacGyver's supposed to be smart, and the tough boys trap him without even trying. Not only is MacGyver supposed to be smart just as a general rule, he seems to know the tough boys are trying to lead him into something throughout the scene. He says, "Okay, I'll bite," before he follows the first tough boy into the building. When he glimpses the tough boys darting around, obviously trying to be seen, he regards them with skepticism. He's obviously playing along to see what they have planned. He's even skilled enough to pick a padlock with the reamer tool on his Swiss Army knife, which is impossible, believe me. I've tried it every time I've seen a padlock for the last 35 years. And yet he steps right into the trap. Second, and even worse, he fails to defuse the bomb, and only survives because the tough boys deliberately didn't use a real blasting cap, because they were only supposed to scare MacGyver, not blow him to smithereens. This goes beyond a MacGyver episode. It's one of my biggest writing-related pet peeves. When a hero is stuck in a life-or-death situation and they only survive because the villain decides to spare them, that makes the hero look weak. What happens in this episode is the tough boys, and Manny, since it's all eventually revealed to have been his plan, beat MacGyver. And they don't even beat him with that diabolical of a plan. He walks right into a trap like a doofus, and then they just plant a bomb and leave. MacGyver does some MacGyver shit to get his hands on the bomb before it goes off, and then he just can't deactivate it. The last second before the timer zeroes out, he just gives up and braces for the end. At least pull out some wires, dude. Do something. Take a shot. It's not simply that MacGyver loses to an adversary. He's human, he's fallible, he's an everyman type, despite the fact that he's also a genius and impossibly resourceful. It's fine for him to lose sometimes, but put some thought into it. Don't put your hero in a situation where he lives to fight another day through no effort of his own. Not only does it make MacGyver weak, it renders everything he does in that scene after his capture pointless. The swinging back and forth in the net, making a hook out of the air conditioner tubing, using the power cord for a lasso, all his efforts to save himself, it all means nothing. It all has no effect whatsoever on the outcome. If the tough boys leave him with an active bomb, he's dead. If the tough boys leave him with a dud, he's alive. What he, the hero, the title character, does has nothing to do with it. That's shoddy writing. How about this? MacGyver succeeds in stopping the bomb's timer with 1 second to spare, then realizes a moment later as he examines it that it's not a real bomb. the dynamite isn't real dynamite. It's road flares disguised as dynamite or some other form of fakery that would read easily on TV. Then, in case there's any confusion from some in the audience, MacGyver can be telling Manny that the bomb was fake in the next scene. And Manny can say, I guess they were just trying to send you a message, MacGyver. It could have been a real bomb if they'd wanted it to be, but it wasn't. That way, the tough boys can still have been trying to scare MacGyver rather than kill him, but the scene doesn't require MacGyver to be a total chump to get the point across. I know pitching rewrites for a 35-year-old TV episode is masturbatory, but it feels so good and I don't want to stop. What if... Okay, the bomb is real. MacGyver doesn't have time to defuse it, so instead of holding on to it and making an I guess I'm gonna die now face, he throws it away. Oh! Maybe the tough boys are ordered to only scare MacGyver, but Koko thinks that MacGyver is too serious a threat to just try and warn off, so he secretly rigs the supposed dud of a bomb to actually explode. Everything proceeds as it does in the episode, but when MacGyver realizes he can't defuse the bomb, he throws it, and it goes out a window and lands in the bed of MacGyver's pickup, bounces once, goes through the back window that was knocked out by the tough boy earlier, lands in the cab, and explodes, blowing the truck to pieces and sending its fetid yellow and brown soul to hell where it belongs. The last scene is Koko's funeral. MacGyver, Hines, and all the kids from the Challengers Club are there at the graveside. Manny is there in handcuffs, escorted by 2 uniformed officers. He's been granted a temporary release to attend. A mournful arrangement of the Tough Boys song is played on bagpipes as Koko's casket is lowered into the ground. After the service, we track MacGyver, walking sadly away, head bowed. He looks up, and there's Pete standing at the edge of the cemetery, and parked next to him is MacGyver's Jeep. MacGyver says, Pete, what are you doing here? And Pete says, I thought maybe you'd need a ride from an old friend. Pete tosses MacGyver the keys. They climb into the Jeep. MacGyver behind the wheel, of course, Pete sitting shotgun. Mac starts the Jeep, shifts into gear, starts to drive away, but then, in the final moments of the episode, suddenly, MacGyver turns straight to camera and says, oh yeah, I almost forgot, say no to drugs.